happens when a police commissioner's daughter decides her father's rank puts her above every standard of decency and strikes a 71-year-old Vietnam veteran to the ground in the park named for people like him. This young woman walked into my courtroom believing that 19 years of her father's institutional authority would function as insulation from what she did. That two attorneys and the weight of a badge she has never worn would reframe what 41 seconds of the phone camera footage showed in unambiguous, unedited detail. But when I asked whether her father was present in this courtroom, and that man stood up from the fourth row in plain clothes, without his rank, without his department, without any of the institutional apparatus that surrounds him when he moves through this city. What happened next is something I have not seen in 37 years on this bench. She stood in front of me with the deliberate composure of someone who had decided not to take any of this seriously. And she said, with that volunteer in the front row still wearing his cervical brace, his coffee-stained vest folded in his lap, that the footage was distorted, that the media had an agenda, that she had felt threatened. The room went very still. But what nobody in that courtroom knew, what even Vanessa Merritt didn't know, was that Commissioner Douglas Merritt was sitting 4 rows back in a plain dark jacket and an open-collar shirt, looking nothing like the official photograph that hangs in every precinct in this city, watching his daughter use his name for the second time as a weapon against the man it was supposed to protect. It was a cold Thursday morning in November, and the file that landed on my desk at 8:15 a.m. told me what kind of morning it was going to be before I finished the second paragraph. I opened it, read the defendant's name, read the title beneath it, and set down my pen. The victim was Earl Donahue, 71 years old, Vietnam veteran, combat medic, 2 tours. For the past 11 years, every Tuesday and every Thursday, he has arrived at Riverside Veterans Memorial Park with a cart carrying coffee and printed resource guides, information about housing services, healthcare access, benefit enrollment for the unhoused veterans who gather there. He does not receive compensation for this. He does not receive recognition for it. He is a widower whose daughter calls him every Sunday. He grows tomatoes in the small garden behind his apartment and brings the surplus to his neighbors. The defendant was Vanessa Merritt, 26 years old, daughter of Police Commissioner Douglas Merritt, 19 years in the role, the highest-ranking law enforcement officer in this city, the man whose photograph hangs in the lobby of every precinct, whose signature appears on every officer's service certification, whose institutional authority extends to the internal affairs unit that would ordinarily investigate a case like this one. On the afternoon of October 22nd, Earl was working near the park's central fountain when Vanessa's group became disruptive in the adjacent memorial observation area, a space marked with signage requesting respectful conduct. Earl approached them. He identified himself as a volunteer. He gestured toward his vest. He asked politely and calmly if they could move or lower their volume. Vanessa stepped toward him and said, "Do you know who my father is? He runs every cop in this city. You breathe because he lets you." Then she struck him across the left side of his face with enough force to send him backward into the edge of the fountain basin. The back of his head struck the stone. He went down, his coffee cups and resource guides scattered across the pathway around him. 7 stitches, a moderate concussion, 2 nights in the hospital. A park visitor sitting on a nearby bench had been filming for 41 seconds before the strike. The footage captured everything. Earl's approach, his voice, the words, the strike, the fall, the scattered cups clearly and completely and without any possibility of interpretation. The footage was online that evening. By the following morning, it had been viewed 800,000 times. By afternoon, veterans organizations in 4 states had released statements. The park's veteran volunteer program was contacted by 340 people offering to take additional shifts in his absence. Someone organized a fundraiser for his medical expenses within 18 hours of the footage going public. It exceeded its goal before midnight. The police commissioner's office issued a statement the following day. 3 sentences. It expressed Commissioner Merritt's personal distress at the incident, confirmed that his daughter was the individual visible in the footage, and stated that the commissioner had full confidence in the justice system to handle the matter appropriately. The statement did not contain the name Earl Donahue. The district attorney filed charges within 48 hours, assault causing bodily harm, harassment, and intimidation. The speed of that announcement told you exactly how much room the footage had left for inaction. By the morning of trial, The courtroom carries the weight of a room that has been waiting for this day since the evening the footage was posted. Veterans sit in the gallery in their service caps, Vietnam-era hats alongside Gulf War caps, alongside the subdued baseball caps of Afghanistan and Iraq veterans. Multiple eras in the same rows. Earl Donahue was in the front row. His cervical brace is visible above his collar. His volunteer vest, coffee-stained, the park's emblem on the chest, is folded in his lap. He has brought it the way people bring the thing that names who they are when they are not certain the room will see them otherwise. Then the doors opened. Vanessa Merritt walked through at 9:20 a.m. in a structured charcoal blazer and dark trousers, the careful, calibrated choice of someone who has been told to look responsible without looking sorry. Her expression was one of deliberate neutrality, a performed absence of emotion that communicated more clearly than any expression would have. Behind her, Grant Elias, a defense attorney who has represented police department personnel and their families in civil matters for 19 years, and a junior associate carrying 2 leather portfolios and a laptop. Vanessa did not look at Earl Donahue when she passed the front row. She did not break stride. She did not glance. She moved through the gallery as though the room's attention was a weather condition she had decided not to acknowledge, as though the man in the cervical brace with the volunteer vest folded in his lap was not someone she had ever seen before. My glasses were off before she reached the defense table. The case was called. The charges were read. I asked Vanessa Merritt how she wished to plead. Elias moved to speak. I told him I had asked his client. Vanessa looked at the bench with the composed stillness of someone who has rehearsed this moment and decided that the correct performance is a careful one, not guilty. What happened in that park was a misunderstanding that has been significantly distorted by partial footage and an agenda-driven media response. I set my pen down. The gallery did not react with sound. It reacted with the held breath of a room that has just been told something it had not fully prepared itself to hear. Said aloud. I told Vanessa that a 71-year-old combat veteran volunteer had required 7 stitches and 2 nights in the hospital after striking the back of his head on a stone basin. Would she like to begin there, or would she prefer to identify what portion of that she considered distorted? She said the footage had been taken out of context. She said Earl had been aggressive in his approach and that she had felt physically threatened. She said the scale of the media reaction reflected the political sensitivity of her father's position rather than the actual nature of the incident. The gallery's held breath became something harder and more specific. I descended from the bench. I walked to the monitor. I pulled up the 41 seconds of footage and played it without comment. Earl approaching across the pathway, his hand extended, the coffee cups visible on his cart, his voice audible, measured, unhurried, Vanessa stepping toward him, the words about the commissioner captured clearly on the phone's audio, the strike, the sound of impact, Earl going down, the resource guide scattering across the path around him. I let it play to its end. Then I turned to face Vanessa Merritt. That man volunteers at that park every Tuesday and Thursday. He has done it for 11 years without compensation. He approached your group politely, identified himself as a volunteer, and asked you to respect a designated memorial space. He was struck hard enough to fall into a stone basin. That is the context. Elias stepped in then, smooth, experienced, reading the room with the fluency of someone who has spent 19 years understanding when a proceeding needs to be reframed. He spoke of the particular and compounding burden placed on the families of senior law enforcement officials. The way public life at that level means that a private moment of poor judgment becomes a politically charged spectacle amplified beyond proportion. He spoke of his client's genuine remorse. He did not mention Commissioner Merritt by name. He did not need to. The weight of that name was present in the room, in the space Elias's language had carefully prepared for it. Implied, structural, impossible to point to directly, but entirely possible to feel. Vanessa's posture released slightly. The specific visible relaxation of someone who believes the thing they were afraid would happen has just been prevented. I let Elias finish every sentence. Then I folded my hands on the bench, looked past him, and asked the question I had been preparing since I read the file that morning. Is Commissioner Merritt present in this courtroom today? Vanessa's posture stopped. Elias did not turn. The junior associate, however, glanced involuntarily toward the rear of the gallery before she could stop herself. Vanessa said her father may have come, that he wanted to be here for her. Then let's ask him. I looked toward the gallery and said clearly and without elevation, Commissioner Merritt, if you are present, I'd ask you to identify yourself. A stillness settled over the room, the specific stillness of a room that has just asked a question it does not know the answer to and is not certain which direction the next moment is going to move. Then from the fourth row, a man stood. Douglas Merritt is 58 years old. He was not in uniform. There was no rank insignia, no department identification, no aide beside him. He was in a plain dark jacket and an open-collar shirt, and he looked nothing like the official photograph that appears in every precinct lobby in this city. He looked like a man who had not been sleeping and who had spent the better part of several days making a decision he knew was going to cost him something he was not yet finished calculating. He stood with his hands at his sides. He did not look at me. He did not look at the cameras. He looked at his daughter. Vanessa turned in her chair and saw her father standing in the fourth row in plain clothes, without his department, without his rank, without any of the institutional weight she had invoked his name to deliver. For the first time since she had walked through those doors, her composure became insufficient. The performance that had held all morning was no longer quite meeting the requirements of the moment. Commissioner Merritt walked to the front of the courtroom without being directed. He stood before the bench. He did not have prepared remarks. He spoke without notes and without the carefully calibrated language that 19 years in public safety leadership had made instinctive. He said that what his daughter did to Earl Donahue in Riverside Veterans Memorial Park was wrong, without qualification, and without the softening language that 19 years of institutional navigation had made readily available. He said the footage was accurate. He said the words she spoke before she struck Earl were the words she spoke, and that he had no interest in this court hearing a different version of them because there was no different version. Then he turned to face the front row of the gallery. Earl Donahue was sitting with his volunteer vest folded over his arm, watching the commissioner with the same quiet, undemanding attention he had maintained since the moment he sat down. Commissioner Merritt looked at him directly and apologized to him. Not as a commissioner, he said, but as the father of the person who put him on the ground in a park that exists specifically to honor people like him. Then he faced the bench. Your Honor, I've spent 19 years in this city asking officers to hold the line between what they want to do and what the law requires. I am not going to stand in this courtroom and ask for something less than that for my own daughter. She will face what this court decides. My office will not be used to soften it. I give you my word, and I give it in this room on the record. The courtroom did not respond with noise. It did the quieter and more lasting thing. It witnessed. Earl Donahue closed his eyes for a brief moment and then opened them. The veterans in the gallery behind him sat very still. Vanessa Merritt was looking at her father with the expression of someone watching the last protection they had believed was in place choose deliberately not to function that way. I put my glasses back on. I told Vanessa Merritt that I presided over this courtroom for 37 years and had watched every configuration of institutional protection move through those doors. Family names, titles, appointments, department affiliations, and the ambient pressure of names that operate like weather in settings like this one. In every case, without exception, the facts have been the facts. Her facts were recorded on a phone camera by a stranger sitting on a park bench. 41 seconds unedited, taken by someone who had no agenda beyond being present. Guilty on all 3 counts. Assault causing bodily harm, harassment, intimidation. The sentence, 90 days in the county correctional facility. 350 hours of community service to be completed with veteran support and outreach organizations. Not administrative work, not remote tasks, but direct in-person service to the population Earl Donahue has been quietly serving for 11 years without recognition or compensation. 1 year of mandatory psychological counseling because consequences without comprehension produce only resentment. A formal written apology to Earl Donahue, composed without attorney assistance to be read aloud in this courtroom before remand. And a public video statement, unscripted, unedited, without legal counsel present, to be submitted to the city's public record and distributed to every law enforcement training program in this state. From the fourth row, Commissioner Merritt spoke quietly. One condition of his own: Vanessa's access to the family's financial support was suspended for the duration of her probation. She would arrange her own housing. She would manage her own expenses. She would complete every hour without the infrastructure her father's position had always provided. I have spent 19 years asking officers to be accountable. I am not going to teach my daughter something different. Vanessa closed her eyes. The officers moved to remand her. She was not looking at Elias. She was looking at her father, who had already risen from the fourth row and was walking through the quiet courtroom toward her. Not quickly, not with ceremony, with the particular deliberateness of a man who has made a decision he intends to walk all the way through. They met in the open space between the gallery and the defense table. Commissioner Merritt put both hands on his daughter's shoulders and looked at her the way parents look at their children when they are simultaneously certain they are doing the right thing and fully aware of what it is costing them. I should have been clearer with you about what my position means and what it doesn't mean. That's my failure. What happened in that park is yours. They are two separate failures, and you are responsible for one of them. Face yours completely. Come back someone who understands the difference. Vanessa's voice, when it came, carried none of the morning's performance. I'm sorry, Dad. I know, prove it. The officers were patient. When they stepped apart, Vanessa straightened, nodded once, and walked with them without being asked twice. Her father stood and watched her go. Then Earl Donahue rose from the front row, cervical brace visible above his collar, his volunteer vest folded over his arm, 11 years of Tuesday and Thursday mornings in the steadiness of his posture. He crossed the courtroom floor and extended his hand to Commissioner Douglas Merritt. The commissioner took it. In the gallery behind them, the veterans rose to their feet one by one without a word spoken between them. Nobody said anything. Nobody needed to. The veteran outreach coordinator who supervised Vanessa's community service hours told the judge at the 6-month review that Vanessa had arrived expecting the service to be about her and left understanding that it was about the people she was serving. That shift, she said, was visible and it was real. Earl Donahue returned to his volunteer shifts at Riverside Veterans Memorial Park 7 weeks after the trial. He brought coffee. He brought resource guides. He did not make a public statement about the trial or the sentence or the commissioner's choice because he has never made public statements and sees no reason to begin. When a journalist asked him whether he found the outcome adequate, he said, "I found it appropriate. There's a difference." The public accountability statement was used in a de-escalation and accountability curriculum at a law enforcement training program within the year. Vanessa spoke at one of the sessions in person, without notes, without making it comfortable, without softening the part where she invoked her father's name before she struck a 71-year-old man who was handing out coffee. Commissioner Douglas Merritt submitted a new departmental policy without announcement. Any case involving immediate family members of senior department personnel would be referred to an independent review unit as standard procedure. Several officers mentioned it to him. He acknowledged each mention briefly and moved on. At Vanessa's community service sessions, there was occasionally a man in a plain dark jacket sitting in the back of the room. No rank insignia, just watching. I keep in the drawer where I keep the things that remind me what 37 years of this work is for. A copy of Earl Donahue's written victim impact statement. The last line reads, "I will keep coming back for the same reason. What happened to me there does not change what the park is for. It only confirms why the work matters." What happened in that park was not about a moment of poor judgment. It was about what a name in law enforcement is supposed to mean and what it means when the man who carries that name stands up in the fourth row in plain clothes and refuses to let it be used as its opposite. For Earl Donahue, for the 11 years, for the park, share this, subscribe. Justice still has a pulse.
A powerful police commissioner's daughter storms into a courtroom after being accused of assaulting an elderly war veteran during a public argument. Confident that her father's badge will protect her, she mocks the veteran and acts completely untouchable in front of everyone. Witnesses describe how the veteran simply asked her to stop yelling at restaurant staff before she exploded in anger and shoved him to the ground. The courtroom becomes tense as security footage is revealed. But everything changes when the judge learns the old man is a decorated military veteran who once saved lives in combat. Furious at the disrespect shown towards someone who served the country, The judge immediately shuts down the commissioner's daughter when she tries using her father's power as an excuse. Then comes the moment nobody expected. The judge delivers a harsh punishment and publicly reminds the courtroom that no family status, money, or political connection places anyone above the law. The commissioner's daughter leaves the courtroom in tears while the veteran receives a standing ovation from everyone watching.